first went over there in 1979, and I saw what they were doing with the larger screens, proportionally spaced text, and the mouse. And it was just instantly obvious to anyone that this was the way things should be. That's our goal for the next 5 years, is that seamless transition between the standalone computer and the computer as part of this network community.
Well, how did the PC change the world?
Well, though the analogy is nowhere perfect, and certainly one needs to factor out the environmental concerns of the analogy as well. There is a lot to be said for comparing it to going from passenger trains to automobiles. And the advent of the automobile gave us a personal freedom of transportation. In the same way, the advent of the computer gave us the ability to start to use computers without having to convince other people that we needed to use computers. And the biggest effect of the personal computer revolution has been to allow millions and millions of people to experience computers themselves decades before they ever would have in the old paradigm, and to allow them to participate in the making of choices and controlling their own destiny using these tools. But it has created problems, and the largest problems are that now that we have all these very powerful tools, we're still islands, and we're still not really connecting these people using these powerful tools together. And that's really been the challenge of the last few years and the next several years, is how to connect these things back together so that we can rebuild a fabric of these things rather than just individual points of light, if you will, and get the benefit of both the passenger train and the automobile. I'm part of this electronically connected community. That's going to provide us wonderful new capabilities and communications abilities, but we still always want to be able to disconnect that network spigot, take it off, and take our standalone computer somewhere, let's say home. Now, what's going to happen rapidly is with radio links and with fiber optics to the home, you're going to be able to hook your computer up to your network at home. But there's always going to be that cabin in the middle of nowhere that I want to go for a 2-week vacation where I want my computer. And if it doesn't work in a completely standalone way, I'm going to be not happy. So we have to provide a fluid way for these things to kind of dock into the mother load network, but also undock and allow me as an individual to carry my computer up into Yosemite backpacking, and where there's no radio links and no fiber into the network, and find out what happened when I left and share some of my thoughts maybe with some other folks. So we're working on that. That's our goal for the next 5 years, is that seamless transition between the standalone computer and the computer as part of this network community.
It also keeps away the Orwellian aspects of always being hooked into the network.
Right. That's right. Now, I actually think what an interesting paradox is, it is the network which is ultimately going to define and create the home computer market, not keeping our recipes on these things or something like we thought in 1975. Being a part of that network and not being able to stay away from it while you're at home will drive people to get computers in every house, just like we have a telephone in every house. Well, Xerox PARC was a research lab set up by Xerox when they were making a lot of profits in the copier days. And they were doing some computer science research, which was basically an extension of some stuff started by a guy named Doug Engelbart when he was at SRI. Doug had invented the mouse and invented the bitmap display, and some Xerox folks that Xerox, I believe, hired away from Doug or split off from Doug somehow and got to Xerox, were continuing along in this vein. And I first went over there in 1979, and I saw what they were doing with the larger screens, proportionally spaced text, and the mouse. And it was just instantly obvious to anyone that this was the way things should be. And so I remember coming back to Apple thinking, our future has just changed. This is where we have to go. The problem was that Xerox had never made a commercial computer. This group of people at Xerox was more concerned with looking out 15 years than they were looking out 15 months and trying to make a product that somebody could use. So there were a lot of issues that they hadn't solved, like menus and other things like that. And at Apple, what we had to do was to do two things. One was complete the research, which really was only about 50% complete. And the second was to find a way to implement it at a low enough cost where people would buy it. And that was really our challenge.
What did you succeed in doing with the Mac?
Well, the Macintosh, as you remember when it came out, we called it the computer for the rest of us. And what that meant was that while experts could use some of the computers that were already out, most people didn't want, again, the computer was not an end in itself. It was a means to an end. And so most people didn't want to learn how to use the computer. They just wanted to use it. And the Macintosh was supposed to be the computer for people that just wanted to use a computer without having to learn how to use one. Spent 6 months. Now, it turned out that the paradox was that to make a computer easier to use, you needed a more powerful computer in the first place, because you were going to burn a lot of the cycles on making it easy to use. And so this computer that was easy to use was actually more powerful and could do more things than the less easy to use computer. And it took people a few years to figure that out about the Macintosh, but I think people did.
Actually, there's a funny joke that we were clowning around one day, and one of our group is an IBM person.
Oh.
And so I was saying, some little girl walks up and sees a prompt
Yeah.
and goes to her daddy and says, "It's broken. Where's my desktop?
Mhm.
Where's my metaphor?" And we've adopted this new metaphor. How has that changed the look of computers?
Well, I think the Macintosh was created by a group of people who felt that there wasn't a strict division between sort of science and art. Or in other words, that mathematics is really a liberal art if you look at it from a slightly different point of view. And why can't we interject typography into computers? Why can't we have computers talking to us in English language? And looking back 5 years later, this seems like a trivial observation, but at the time it was cataclysmic in its consequences, and the battles that were fought to push this point of view out the door were very large.